declaring an Islamic state and a leader for Muslims everywhere. A Sunni armed group says it's establishing a caliphate in areas it controls in Iraq and Syria. A challenge to Iraq, the West, or al-Qaeda itself. This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Sami Zeidan. An offshoot of al-Qaeda has declared the areas it's captured in Iraq and Syria an Islamic state or caliphate. The group, formerly known as the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, has also shortened its name just to Islamic State. It proclaimed its leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, as the head of that state, or the caliph for Muslims everywhere in the world. And a statement posted online called on factions worldwide to pledge their allegiance. Now, the Iraqi government says the group has become a threat to all countries. Imran Khan in Baghdad helps set up our discussion.
In an audio message and a manifesto published on the web, a line in the sand has been drawn. The Islamic State is the new name for ISIL, says the group. It's a declaration of intent, the establishment of the Islamic Caliphate. The group say the territories that they control are now united under the leadership of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the new caliph. It intends to unite areas from Aleppo, Syria to Diyala, Iraq under its black flag. The last time a caliphate existed in the world, it was 1924, and the Ottoman Empire was in its final days. The Sunni rebels in charge of Tikrit and other cities have been asked to pledge allegiance. So far they've not reacted to the statement, but fighting still continues for the town. This announcement will put pressure on Iraq and Syria. It's designed to get people to rally around the group's cause, but it will also have a political impact here in Iraq. On July 1st, the parliament come together to discuss the formation of a new government. This announcement, plus other pressures, will be a big test for Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to see if he has the support to remain in the job. But as the crisis goes on, even the Prime Minister's natural allies, such as the Shia political party, the Southdarists, aren't confident the Prime Minister has the support.
I believe that the chances for the current Prime Minister to run for a third term are very low in comparison to other candidates. We believe that according to the Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani, it is better to choose the one who can get the consensus and the acceptance of all the political partners and blocs across the political and sectarian divide.
Sunni politicians have long called for the Prime Minister to go and now openly say that his exclusionary style is to blame.
Firstly, his policies have ended his political life expectancy. His great failure in not being up to the task is not managing state institutions under his command in a professional way, to be biased and unjust amongst the different segments of the Iraqi society. It's these factors that have helped him lose his support.
Politically, Maliki did win the popular vote in Iraq. His party got the most seats, but not enough to form a government, so he needs alliances. Alliances he needs to find with other political blocs in order to remain Prime Minister. With the Islamic State now upping the stakes with their declaration, the pressure from all sides is mounting. Imran Khan, Al Jazeera, Baghdad.
All right, so now while Iraqi politicians may be struggling to try and put the next government together, one group, as we've been reporting, has already announced it's put a caliphate together. Well, let's explain what that is. Well, a caliphate is a civil state governed by Islamic law and led by a political leader known as a caliph. Now, religious texts speak of the need for Muslims to be united under one caliph. The caliph is not seen as a pope, for example. He's supposed to be a fallible leader appointed by the people to whom he is accountable. Well, the last caliphate ended with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire in 1924. And this new declaration is proving controversial among some Islamic groups because of the brutality of the group, now known as the Islamic State, and its method of self-declaring its own leader as caliph. Plenty more to discuss here then with our guests. Let's bring them into the discussion. We have joining us here in the studio Bilal Abdul Kareem, a journalist and filmmaker who's filmed armed groups fighting in Syria. Joining us from Jeddah is Khaled Al Maeena, editor-at-large at the Saudi Gazette. And in Washington, D.C., we have Douglas Ollivant, a senior national security fellow with the New America Foundation and former Iraq director on the National Security Council, advising the Bush and Obama administrations. Good to have you all with us. If I could start with Bilal here in the studio. So now, instead of perhaps consolidating its territory, which it's just only recently captured, but instead of trying to cement its alliances with other armed groups, here the ISIL is declaring a caliphate. You've been on the ground a couple of years watching these people. Why? Why have they moved?
Well, that's a good question. And the big question is, why now? It would appear that they would possibly be alienating their support structure that they need so badly, particularly at this time when they're trying to overthrow the Maliki government.
It just doesn't make sense to most observers that you talk to, does it?
No, it doesn't appear to make that much sense, particularly now when the fight is so hot against the Maliki government. They run the risk of losing their support structure. That which is not always reported in the media is that ISIS is not the head of the movement in Iraq. There are other groups that are out there that their numbers are much larger than...
There's a lot of Iraqi tribes, there are Ba'athist, Naqshbandi groups and so on and so forth.
How are they going to feel about now?
That was going to be my question.
Well, I don't personally think that they're going to like the idea that all of a sudden they went from an uneasy ally, because I've seen the interviews with the spokespeople and such like that, where they've said that ISIS is a part of the movement, but they do not have direct contact with them. And so they're going to
already trying to put some distance between them.
And they're going to have to go from that to all of a sudden saying that we are now a part of their state.
All right, so that's Iraqi tribes and perhaps Ba'athists and Naqshbandis. Let's bring Khaled Al Maeena into the discussion. If we could focus, Khaled, on the relationship between the ISIL, or the Islamic State, as it's now calling itself. I'm not sure what acronym is really appropriate anymore. The relationship between them on the one hand and al-Qaeda, especially some of the al-Qaeda subgroups, al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, al-Qaeda in North Africa. What does this announcement do to that very tense relationship that already existed between ISIL and al-Qaeda?
Well, the ISIS and al-Qaeda, it's a marriage of convenience. They hate each other. They used each other in Syria. Al-Qaeda is a splinter group. There is no original Qaeda. They are what you call copycats. And these are led by cult leaders. And once a cult leader is killed or disappears, another one takes place. The ISIS also is not, will not be welcomed by the other groups who are against the Malikis because of the atrocities they committed, because of the killings, the crucifixions and all. These are, frankly speaking, have been described as butchers. The Naqshbandis, the other groups and all who are against the al-Maliki government.
But if al-Qaeda, Khaled, has splintered, might the ISIL, by this announcement, encourage some defections from some of these splintering al-Qaeda groups? Might they momentarily grow stronger because of this announcement?
Oh, they will, but at the same time, I was talking to somebody in India, and because there was a news that many Indians were going to fight, and these people wanted to cause chaos and mayhem in the Muslim world by asking people from Morocco to Indonesia. When you say the caliphate, it has a romantic tone. Despite the fact that the caliphate was over 1924, there's no way you can have a caliphate now with, the Muslim world is not a monolith. There are different shades of Islam or Islamic behavior. So they use the word as a last-ditch effort to gather people. And there are many people who have been shunned by society and other people who see injustice and things that they can't get. So for them, this will be a rallying point. But I think this will fail.
All right, let's bring Douglas into the discussion now. If you look at the comments being made here, it seems like the ISIL, by this announcement, or the IS, may be uniting its enemies, causing divisions with people who are working alongside it, weaken the alliance of jihadi groups. That sounds like a situation the US wouldn't mind too much when it comes to US policy.
No, I think directly this will not impact the United States. The United States doesn't care if ISIL declares itself the caliphate and the IS tomorrow. That's not going to directly affect U.S. policy. Nor, I suspect, does the Iraqi government or, say, the Iranians care. I think this will be an intra-Shia, or correction, intra-Sunni discussion. This is aimed at, first the local tribes in Iraq and Syria. At the Ba'athist they're aligned with al-Qaeda, as discussed, and I think ultimately at the Gulf states and Saudi Arabia, claiming, indirectly undermining the legitimacy of those states.
How would it impact perhaps any decision the U.S. might be thinking or taking about increasing support for the Iraqi army, which increasingly in the region is seen as a very sectarian, Shiite-dominated army and administration? Would this make the U.S. reluctant to be seen as backing a sort of fight against the quote-unquote Sunni caliphate?
I think it's, in the short term, probably not. In the longer term, if were this to cause divisions and cause it to be easier for us to distinguish between the Islamic State and the other actors in Iraq it's currently aligned with, again, the tribes, the Ba'athists, former regime elements, then that might make it easier for the United States to act.
All right, now let's also remind ourselves of what this group has been saying when it made the declaration. It's seen as a direct challenge to other al-Qaeda and other armed groups in the region. The Islamic State's announcement talks about this, saying, "As for you, soldiers of the platoons and organizations, know that after this consolidation and the establishment of the caliphate, the legality of your groups and organizations has become invalid." Now, Bilal, that sounds very sort of confrontational. You either give me your oath of allegiance or you're invalid. Do you expect that we're going to see an actual return to armed fighting between ISIL and some of the other armed groups? Well,
I don't think we'll be seeing a return to to armed fighting, because the armed fighting never stopped. It's going on right now, and it's ongoing. I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here. I think before we can even adequately discuss whether this is an actual caliphate or not, there's a very important point that was in that communique which they sent out, which they said that the people of responsibility and the people of their structure got together and decided that this is the time to put out, to start the Islamic Caliphate. Well, an interesting thing here is that who are these people? That was not made clear. So I think before you can even guess and wonder if the people are going to actually follow you, then you're going to have to say who these people of responsibility and those people of authority are. You can't just say, well, yeah, we're going to have an Islamic Caliphate today. I mean, you and I could get together and put together an Islamic Caliphate tomorrow, and just one of us declare ourselves. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, but what about when it comes to, I mean, I know you spent a while looking at the armed groups on the ground. In the last couple of weeks, it seems as if there has been some semblance of unity, at least in the Iraqi scenario, between ISIL and some of the other Sunni groups and tribes which are rebelling. Might that come to an end? Might we start to see some blows being traded now?
I would have to say that those alliances are going to be severely tested. I think that this was very, very premature for them to make this type of announcement at this particular time when they so desperately need this alliance to hold together. From the statements that have been made by their spokespersons, I'm talking about from the Sunni tribesmen, it does not appear that they were so happy to have them even a part in their ranks. And now they're going to have to submit to their leadership.
That sounds like a very tall order, doesn't it?
This I've got to see.
And as you know, the mentality of ISIL, they don't offer very many invitations politely the second and third time.
Well, just what they're doing now and the language that they're using now, basically it's join us or else.
Face some really hard consequences, what it
this
sounds
is not.
Like. I mean, let's be honest here. Once you talk about caliph, If, as a Muslim, you refuse to give your bay'ah, your oath of allegiance, then you're now putting that person in a whole new light. He's anti-Islam. He's liable to be killed.
Or maybe even out
right?
of Islam. Exactly. So that's where the danger in it lies.
It takes it up to a whole new notch now, a whole new level.
To declare an Islamic caliphate, it's got to be done by taking the opinions and the agreement of a predominant number of scholars and people of authority and people of influence.
Right.
Without that, you're setting the stage for bloodshed, which I think we've set the stage for now.
Khaled Al Maeena, this is also something of a challenge to the legitimacy of Arab states in the announcement that was given by the Islamic State, the so-called Islamic State. Isn't there a legitimacy challenge here?
Well, I think, yes, it's not a legitimacy challenge, but more so trying to create confusion, as I said earlier. What I truly believe is that these people are trying to prey on the minds of the young people. Many of them have been frustrated. They have seen how on many occasions the Arab Spring failed. They have seen on many occasions, they read about how backward the Arab states are and all. So these are like cannon fodder for them. It is to these people that they're addressing. And if you check some of their websites and the YouTubes, it's more focusing on the young people to come and join them. And the same message, you're either with us or against us. Many people have joined from adjoining countries. Governments, yes, are a bit worried that they should not. In Saudi Arabia, there have been several measures taken. But as I said, our neglect of the youth over the past few years in the Arab countries has made them join these groups who have offered them everything, including the chance to be part of a world power and an Islamic caliphate.
All right, let's remind ourselves of what the actual announcement said. The Islamic State's declaration can be seen as a direct challenge to Gulf Arab rulers, with the group saying, "It is incumbent upon all Muslims to pledge allegiance to the Khalifa Ibrahim and support him. The legality of all emirates, groups, states and organizations becomes null by the expansion of the caliphate's authority and the arrival of its troops to their areas." Now, Douglas, what I'm wondering here is how complicated this is going to get, not only for the US, but for the US's Arab allies in trying to support a Sunni rebellion, but also not wanting to support elements of it that include groups which are trying to challenge the very legitimacy of some of these Sunni Arab states. Very complex situation, is it not?
Very, and this has always been a very delicate balance. Those of us watching this did not expect this coalition to hold together in Iraq very long. All you have to do is look over the what's left of the border into Syria and see that ISIS is there assassinating al-Nusra leaders. They're fighting against the moderate Sunnis in that country. So in Syria right now, the bulk of the fighting is intra-Sunni between ISIL and these other groups. So in the longer term, we were all confident that was going to happen in Iraq as well. This announcement may well accelerate it. And as you just brought up, what's new in this is not its challenge to al-Qaeda. That has been out there for some time. What is new is the challenge to all the existing states in the region.
Khaled Al Maeena, for a long time, a lot of the Gulf Arab states' policy has been, shall we say, not very pleased with the way al-Maliki was running things in Iraq. With this announcement, with the rising power apparently of the Islamic State or the ISIL, who is still the bigger threat? Do you think Arab countries are going to change their policy orientation at all, or are they going to remain focused on the removal of Maliki as the central goal here?
Well, al-Maliki has been an impediment on many occasions. If one takes it and speaks about it in an academic manner, there were many mistakes he had done. But I think the time has now come to challenge the new threat of these militants or criminal groups that are, and who are sweeping across Iraq and telling people that they're going to reach this border and that border. So I think al-Maliki has to also listen to what advice the United States will give him, because initially the attack on Iraq also was part of the problem and caused all this. And at the same time, the GCC countries should get their plan together and come up to whatever plan is to stop this, because we cannot just shoo it away.
So do you think, Khaled, that Arab countries are going to focus more now on fighting ISIL than, undermining al-Maliki, for example?
Well, undermining is not the right thing. I think there have been many advices given to him. I know of some. There have been messages given to him, but he's been very obstinate. Now, if he's going to get a new government, or if somebody else steps in, it's time, because the division of Iraq would have a domino effect. Today we heard that Israel would welcome a Kurdistan state. So we don't want, you know, cantons in places where there were cities and states before.
Right. But don't you think that that's actually part of the problem, that I think the United States is still feeling like the Maliki government is salvageable? And I think that that's even tarnishing the U.S. image even more when you've got a government that's killed its people, tortured its people, and created a great deal of havoc. And now, after there have been gains taken by the Sunni resistance, now they want to talk about, okay, I think that we should the government should be more inclusive, and they're still keeping Maliki's name in the sentence. I think that that's a flaw in itself.
All right, let's bring Douglas perhaps in to comment on that sort of sentiment. I guess the question is, does US policy know where it's going? I mean, you could argue, I know that you advised the Bush administration as well, but there are plenty of those who argue that were it not for the US invasion and occupation of Iraq, we wouldn't be talking about the establishment of a caliphate in Iraq today. Does US policy really know where it's going?
Well, I don't think we should relitigate 2003. That's deep in the past. But certainly, the U.S. needs a new policy here. And I think this is reshuffling the deck. I mean, there are a lot of existential questions here now. I think the most important one is, as you pointed out, you have to ask what the Gulf policy now will be towards the Maliki government. But that's a proxy for what do they think about Iran, and will the Gulf states see this new Islamic State as a more urgent threat than their long-term fear of Iran? I think that remains an open question, and that will impact how they react to this. With respect to the Maliki government,
what do you think the U.S. message will be to the Gulf Arab allies as they ponder that question of who's the bigger threat?
I think clearly from a U.S. perspective, this new Islamic State, ISIL, remains the most imminent threat. The Iranians don't seem intent on expanding their borders. ISIL seems very intent on expanding its not only into Iraq, but they're very open about their aspirations for Jordan, and presumably Saudi Arabia would follow.
Bilal, can this group be crushed? We're told they now have a lot of American equipment. They're flush with money after raiding banks in the area. Can they be crushed, or will they simply perhaps go back to some of the areas you've been filming in Syria and change the balance of power there?
Well, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Once it's out of the bottle, it either has to survive or not. The situation in Syria hasn't changed all that much. There's a bit more celebrating and such like that, but the actual situation on the ground for ISIS hasn't changed all that much. However, it's changed a lot in Iraq, and with this new declaration, it hasn't changed anything with the different groups which are fighting them. They're going to continue to fight. And I spoke to Hassan Aboud from the Islamic Front just this morning to try to get his take on the whole thing. And basically, he was saying that you can't establish a caliphate based upon the tactics that ISIS are using. So they're going to continue to resist, and they're going to continue to fight them in Syria.
All right, very briefly, because I think we've just got a minute left. Khaled Al Maeena, in a strange sort of twisted way, does al-Maliki and the ISIL really need each other to continue to flourish and exist? They're the best rallying call for their respective enemies, are they not?
Well, I don't think so. I think Maliki has got no place to go. But remember here, as the gentleman was saying, reshuffling of cards. But every time the United States reshuffles cards, innocent people die here. I truly believe that the Arab world, if it wants to maintain or salvage whatever is left of it in terms of land, peace and dignity, should get together, forget everything, and Maliki also should step down and see somebody who's more appealing to the Iraqis or to others. It is not a Maliki versus Saudi Arabia or a Maliki versus the Gulf states. It's a question now of survival of all states in the region to contain this imminent threat and the danger, and to choke off all supplies, material and financial supplies to these people.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Let's thank our guests so much. Bilal Abdul Kareem here in the studio, Khaled Al Maeena in Jeddah, and Douglas Ollivant in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
And as ever, we welcome your thoughts on the issue. You can leave us your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or go to @AJ Inside Story on Twitter. I'm Sami Zeidan. Thanks for watching. For now, it's goodbye.